A Clearer View on Love is a relationships podcast for women with clarity coaches Lucy Bainbridge and Joe Munday, helping you be your true self in all your romantic interactions.
Hello, welcome to the 5th edition of A Clearer View on Love, a podcast around relationships and having a clear head and how that can help. Today we have a guest speaker on our show, Sandie Martel. She's also a clarity practitioner, and the topic we are picking today is something that we all, me and Joe and Sandie, have all really struggled with in the past, which is keeping calm when your emotions are high in the relationship. The thing that we wanted to see if we can get to the bottom of is really how to not just behave differently when our emotions are high, but to actually feel okay and still feel centered and calm, even when we're not in a situation that we like or someone's done something wrong. And Sandie has gone through a lot of difficult situations such as divorce and separation. So I'm going to hand you over to her. And Sandie, please introduce yourself and tell us your experience in this area.
I've been through a divorce after 18 years in a relationship, and we had two separations, and the two were very, very different. And so the emotions were really, really high, and I couldn't cope with that. I just wasn't able to get my head around this, to understand what was going on, and to be able to really cope with it. So we separated after 15 years, something like this, and then we separated again after 18 years. And the second time was very different. So it was the same circumstance, it was the same happening, but the way I reacted was very different. The first time I was feeling really low and just couldn't cope with it, just couldn't do anything with that, and with myself anyway, and ended up in hospital and, really, really bad. But the second time was very different in the way that, I knew it was over. I knew it was going to go through, we were going to go through divorce. It's just like you've got this strength behind you. You've got this, I don't want to say power, but you've got this resilience within you, which is helping you to go beyond, the emotions and everything.
So what you're saying is that the first time with the 15 years, it was too much to bear. And then the second time it was, you just realised that even though the emotions were there, you could cope.
Yeah, I mean, my head was much clearer then, despite the emotions being really, really high. But I knew what to do. I just knew what to do in that moment. And it's something that we don't necessarily know. The first time I just thought, it's a mess, my life's a mess, it's all going wrong. And, so it's just all the thinking around this that's just racing. And you can't really see very clearly in that, when you're just very much into your thinking. When you realise that you've got this resilience within you, you've got what it takes, to go through anything that happens.
So was that just by accident, or was it kind of, did you actually know something different at that point?
At that moment, no, I was just surprised. I was very surprised. I thought it was going to be like the first time. But actually, I was going through the motions, I was going through what I had to do. I had to move, I had to, I've got 2 kids, I had to look after them, I had to do all of that. And it's only when I looked back, maybe 2 months after, I just thought, oh, wow, I've managed to do it without really thinking about it too much, without feeling down. I was just, as if you're being pushed, But it's only when I looked back then I realized that that's what's happened. And it was quite amazing to be able to realize that. You tend to think that, oh yeah, it's because I did that or whatever, you know. But it's not. It's just the way we are, I think. But we don't realize that we've got this possibility to go through certain things, whatever happens in life, I think.
When you're saying that, Sandie, it reminds me of a situation where, like when circumstances can get really extreme, then something else can come through. As in, like you can have maybe your day-to-day arguments, and you can kind of feel really sort of buffeted around by them, and quite kind of really fragile and vulnerable to things, and but then when something quite dramatic happens, you react in a surprising way. Like, for example, my dad collapsed at home years ago, and it was on reflection, looking back, I was really calm. Like I was just like, right, yeah, call the ambulance, or do all these things, and it was kind of automatic, but it was sort of, there wasn't this panic feeling. If it was there, it was kind of being I was overriding it with something else, and everything just kind of flowed in a funny way, and it all just happened, and I didn't have any panic, and everything was fine. And when you're saying that, what comes to mind is being in the moment, and what comes through is who you are beyond your churned up thinking. And we've all been exploring, like in the last few years, sort of who we are beyond the churned up thinking, because we are something more than that, and we don't need to have a big disaster like you know, some kind of extreme thing like that for it to emerge, and it can emerge much more easily when we don't take all those every sort of thought that we have. If we don't take it so seriously, then there's that space for something else to emerge, which is your true self, which is much more resilient and powerful than we can possibly realise.
Yeah, I think, you know, it's something that can happen, that just happens at any moment. I mean, it doesn't, you don't have to go through something really extreme to experience this. I've had another situation where this was with another person, and we had an argument, you know, and I knew that I had to talk to this person, and what I wanted to do was I really wanted to tell him that this is how it is, you know, this is my view, this is how I work, and I just wanted to, you know, just to throw it at him, you know, I just wanted to say, right, this is how it is, this is who I am, and you've got to accept it, or that's it, you know, that's the way it's got to work. So I knew he was really angry, and I thought, okay, this conversation is going to go really bad. So we started discussion, and I just thought, okay, so I could see it was going, you know, it was just going really strong to start with. And then I thought, okay, I'm just going to listen. I just want to listen. And I just listened there, and I heard something very different, you know. And within 10 minutes, we had a 2-hour conversation, but within the first 10 minutes, I just thought, actually, you know, I realized I didn't have to say what I wanted to say. You know, I didn't have to impose my thinking upon him, you know, on him. I didn't have to do that. And what's happened is I just calmed down, I just relaxed, you know, and I just listened. And by listening, you can hear very different things. You know, I could hear, you know, the anger was coming from the insecurity around, you know, what he thought about what was happening. And I just could see that, and I just could see, you know, it's just being able to see the human being who's there. And it was a very different experience, and I wasn't expecting that, and I hadn't prepared for that. You know, I just wanted to go into a fight. but you get in. I mean, yeah. So you see, it doesn't always happen. You've got your own wisdom, and you don't necessarily access it only when you're calm, or only when you've got an extreme situation. It can just happen at any moment, whatever the circumstance, whether it's a small argument or a big argument or whatever. It doesn't really matter. But you really get to understand the person. It's about understanding what's going on, and not just judging, the behavior. Just seeing beyond that, which is quite amazing to experience, I must say.
What you just said about it's the anger and the need to put your thinking upon them is coming from an insecurity, and you've already decided that what they're going to say doesn't matter because you know the person so well, or you think you do. You assume what they're going to say, but so you go into this argument almost with a made up person, a made up understanding of what the other person's saying. So you're arguing from a place of assumption on what the other person already thinks or is trying to do to you. You're projecting an image of what people are doing to you onto them. Yeah. And so you argue as if that's what they're saying. And when you said about listening, that's something I was never able to do. Totally impatient, totally intolerant, really defensive, because it was all about I have to kind of force this person not to do this to me. And I don't even know if, and I never even stopped to analyse it or think that maybe it's just my thinking about what this person is doing. It's not actually what their intentions are.
Yeah, and I think relationships offer a challenge in that you're bringing all of that past from up to this very moment when you're having the argument. You're bringing all of that stuff about who you think they are and what they are to now, and so to be able to listen and be present with someone in that situation is like and you're in your thinking as well. It's like a real challenge, because kind of to drop into the moment is to kind of bypass all of those ideas about who they are and what they are. And yes, they think this about, as you say, Lucy, you've kind of decided what they think about you and what they think about the situation, and it's wrong, frankly, and so that's all there then, and there's no space for hearing from beyond your expectations and also beyond what they're throwing at you, because there's a being beyond their anger as well that might be very hidden in the moment, but nevertheless there is their essence beyond their habitual thinking, which is potentially possible to see when you're in that listening, when you're in the moment with them and listening to them.
What's happened for me in that moment is I didn't just, not necessarily a doing, in a way. You can do it in this way, of course you can just say, okay, I'm just going to listen. But actually what's happened is I just sat there and, the thinking started to fall away, and it's just really hearing what's happening there, yeah.
So something I'm interested in is the separation the first time. And how would you kind of explain the difference with really listening to your thinking and getting caught up in the thinking that you're having and, living it and then more just kind of being aware of it without paying much attention? In terms of, so that people can relate, what was it more like the first time?
I just wanted to escape. That's all I wanted. I just didn't want to listen. I didn't want to hear the same old, it's my fault and that sort of thing. I just didn't want to hear that. So I just, I was escaping. It's just like I just didn't go to. I didn't want to hear whatever I'd done wrong. It's always. It seems like it's always when we've got an argument. When you're in a couple, there's always a point where, when there's something happening, we just say to the other person that, well, this is what you do and this is how I'd like it to be, or we've got expectations about the other person, and I couldn't cope with that anymore. I just couldn't. I was fed up with being the one who had to change all the time. So that was really hard. My way of dealing with that was just to escape, just to avoid the argument, really avoid it. And then the second time, some sort of knowing, I knew what I wanted for myself. Yeah, that was very different. I knew I wasn't going to let him say how it was going to be, So I became a bit more. I had a bit more strength than the first time, I would say. But it was very different. Actually, it's the same situation, but very different state of mind. Very different. Yeah, coming from a very different place.
So it sounds like the second time you were more in tune with what you wanted and who you were, and like what I was hearing was like a centeredness with that, a sort of you weren't going to change your behaviour for someone else's behaviour. You weren't going to allow that to affect what you were going to do, and I think that's really interesting, because when you've got a really sure sense of who you are and what you want, there is that feeling of you're a more kind of impenetrable force in a way. It's sort of like actually the behaviour of someone else is slightly less relevant. You're more in touch with the part of you that is kind of see through that, and for yourself, for like what you want, who you are. I'm interested to hear from you, Lucy, actually, about that kind of in terms of when you've had arguments and you've felt like you've sort of like flown off the handle or whatever.
Well, I think what you just said, Sandie, about knowing what you wanted the last time, it reminded me of, actually, apart from one, all the relationships that I've ended. So my last relationship, and all through all of my relationships, my behaviour, it's this expectation. It's this expectation that's the fucker. It's this idea, really, when I go back, that this person needs to behave in the exact way. That's where I got my happiness from. That's where my escape was. I had all these ideas about what love was, and if they didn't fit the behavioural box of that, then it was like the end of the world. But I would remember saying, this is it, this has got to be it, I've got to leave, because I was so hurt. They'd said this and they'd done that, like it was this whole fear of being trampled on, walked over. It seemed like it was about them and their behaviour, but it was really all about how I felt about myself. And if I didn't let go of this if I let go of this anger and this condemnation on the other person, then I would be weak. Now, all of the ones, whenever my relationship did end, it was always very clear and like, oh, I'm just going to go. And actually I would be more kind to the other, so much more sympathetic and warm in that kind of situation, because I was sure I was gone. I'm gone. Like, I'm not going to stay here. And I would always think afterwards, God, like, what was your problem? Like, it doesn't matter. I would always think that, like, didn't matter. I'm not going to do that again. I just won't behave that way next time.
And the difference is, like, when you're reflecting back, you've got less thinking about it all, so you can see it more open-mindedly, like more logically, whatever, like just common sense. But when you're in the moment, it's kind of like, when you're describing that, it's just like, gosh, there's lots of analysis, there's lots of thinking about what's the right thing to do, what's the wrong thing to do, is he the right person, is he not the right person, blah, 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 blah. So that's like a lot of busyness around that person, and we think that is somehow helping, and you're going to work it out in your head by like racing, by your thoughts racing along. But actually that is the thing that's actually sabotaging things. You think it's helping, but actually that racing mindset is the actual thing. In the moment you think it's the thing that's going for you. I can relate to that. We're thinking, oh, I need to, like, I can work this out or whatever. Like it's your tool, and you need it. And so the last thing that occurs to you is that it's the thing that is actually getting in the way. And if you do just step back and let yourself just quieten down and just like reflect on things, that you have got wisdom there, and you have got insight there that will show you where to go and what to do. But you don't need to be like going at 1,000,000 miles an hour to get there.
Yeah, and that now, I didn't know this then. I didn't know what I'm about to say then, but I know it now. Whether or not my behaviour will be, but the awareness that I can't, there's nothing that person can do to me that's going to actually create that kind of pain, and that it's always going to be the thinking that's doing that. Whereas before it was the thinking to cope with what they've done. I'm thinking this way to cope with what they've done. Like, completely, totally unaware that it was my thinking about the way that they behaved that was the problem. Like, I just didn't know that stuff. I didn't know that my thinking was causing the emotion. And it's not that I would never now get wrapped up in that, but at least I know that as a fact.
And by knowing that, it doesn't mean that you won't get caught up in it anyway, but you'll come back to it. Knowing it as a fact is good. It's just going to make you come back to it, because it's that's what's true anyway. Just knowing that you're anything, all the emotions and everything's just coming from your thinking in the moment. So,
and like your situation, the circumstances were the same. Your thinking was different. Your experience was different.
Completely, yeah. Completely different. And now, I've got a new, that was 4 years ago now, and I've got a new perspective on this. Again, it's again something very different. But it's, so we thought that we had these problems. Yeah, we've got so many things going on, and yeah, we just thought that our problems these were real problems at the time for me. We weren't able to see that we were just, our emotions weren't coming from each other. But I've managed to see, so it's seeing beyond the behavior, just knowing that, the other person is doing the best he can, with whatever he's got, and I did the best I could. I really did. And if we had seen things differently and seen what the real problem was, which, what we thought was the problem is just not true. If we had seen that, I think the outcome could have been very different. So, you know, I still had some anger and loads of things going on, lots of thinking about my ex-husband. The last 3 years, I would say, yeah. 3 years after the divorce, you know, just always thinking, you know, oh, that's what he did to me, you know. That was always in the back of my mind, you know. So everything I was doing, you know, everything, I was always going back to that. Oh, it's because of that, you know, it's because I'm divorced now. It's because, you know, I'm single with 2 kids and everything. It's always around this. But when I saw the truth of it, I could only, you know, what was left is just feeling compassion for your partner or for my now ex-husband. Just really feeling that you know, we can only do the best we can, you know, in any given moment anyway.
Yeah, so I love what you just said about the fact that when we're in it, we can't, what we think are the problems, these minute kind of differences, etc., are the problem, but really when you've come out of it and you've got that clear head and you've let it go, because that you can then see really what was going on, and then you're filled back up with love and compassion, because it takes you out of it being this personal sticky drama and into a clear picture of where a misunderstanding has happened. And I love that you said about problems, because we are the creator of the problems. Like you just said about divorce, we got a divorce. Well, why is that a problem? That's what I thought. Well, we've created the reasoning to why it's a problem. We've added meaning to an event and said problem. And so that's just a lesson for us to look at, like, and then to summarize. When we're examining these really emotional, when we're in this high emotional situation, it's like knowing that it can only be your thinking that's causing the emotion. It's really knowing that it's going to be helpful, no matter what. But also, if you're feeling that, it's like all it is then a resistance to what's already happened, to something that's already there, that's already true. And when you know it's just your thinking, like, it's not that you're just going to drop out of it and walk around happily, but if you really understand that, then the problem only lies within you. There's nothing out there, including a partner. So hopefully that's going to help people who are listening to see maybe that the emotion, and when you're thinking in that way, you're not seeing it right. You're not seeing it right. And that nothing needs to be done about it. Nothing needs to be done, again, because when it's, our thinking will take us down this long alleyway of, like, you know, how it all needs to change and stuff needs to be done, but nothing necessarily needs to be done if we can see that there's actually nothing wrong in the first place, that it just is what it is. So we'll leave it there. I hope this has been helpful. It's been lovely chatting to you, ladies. It's been really, really good having Sandie on. Really enjoyed it. You should come on again. Definitely. And if you want to speak to Sandie, like if you're going through divorce or separation, or you've got, if anything she's spoken about makes you want to talk to her because she's an amazing coach, then her email address is Sandie with an IE at Sandie Martel, M for mother, A for alpha, R, T for Tommy, E for Echo, L for Lima.com. So Sandie at sandiemartel.com. So that's it. Speak soon.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. And if you'd like to contact us, our email addresses are lucy@lucyforlife, and Jo, J-O, at jo-munday.com. Thanks very much.